Good evening. I'm very pleased to be with you this evening, albeit virtually, and I do hope I can add a little to your discussions. I was asked to talk about my interest in work in addiction. Of course, I know that this evening you will be concentrating mainly on the 12-step program, but I hope by telling you a little bit about my journey, how I became interested in enabling people with drug dependency to be in work, and then moving on to my independent review for government, that it will add a little to your discussion. So can I start with my light bulb moment? In 2004, while president of the Royal College of Physicians, I began to understand through one of my faculties, the Faculty of Occupational Medicine, the importance of what I'll call the Marmot agenda, the determinants of health, which of course are largely social. And I became very interested in work and unemployment, its relationship to health, and of course the other determinants of health, of which addiction is a very powerful one. And being interested in the relationship between unemployment and work and health and well-being led me in 2006 to become the National Director for Health and Work. And ultimately, that I think contributed to my being able to do the work I've done in the last 2 to 3 years on illicit drugs. Whilst doing the advisory role in DWP for the government on health and work, I was asked to do a review on employment outcomes for those who were addicted either to drugs or alcohol. And the government at that time also threw in obesity, although it was a very, very small part of the report. I was looking at the ability of people who were in our benefit system to be able to return to the world of work. This was an important review. It enabled me to start to understand that world of addiction. And while doing that review, I became convinced that work and other meaningful activities are really essential elements in the recovery process. What I discovered was there wasn't much emphasis on that recovery process, a lot of emphasis on treatment, i.e. substitution therapy for heroin, but I felt it really important that recovery should be developed. These components, I thought, should feature more prominently in success measured used to assess the treatment provider's performance. I wanted measurement of whether people went into positive recovery and also whether they were enabled to go towards the world of work. Doing that review, I considered the role of employers, both in retaining existing staff with addiction problems and recruiting new staff who were in recovery. And also I was interested in individuals leaving the secure state, leaving prison, who wanted to return to the world of work. And I've tried to summarize very briefly on this slide what employers told me. I found them generally supportive of existing staff who developed drug and alcohol problems and who were willing to be open about it. They tried to be helpful to get them into the appropriate treatment, but they were very much more reluctant to hire new recruits who had histories of addiction. What they said, quite simply, was the government needs to de-risk the recruitment decision for them. They need to make it okay for us to recruit people who have had problems with any addiction, and they need, through whatever mechanism, to provide some support so that when, as may well happen, an addicted person may just have a short relapse, there was someone, a caseworker or someone, to help the employer so that it didn't disrupt their business. So that was really summarizing what I found was the view of employers. Remember, this was 2016. And out of that review, I made what was, in fact, one of the major recommendations of that particular report. And it was based on trying to understand the work that had been done in a program called Individual Placement and Support, which is a program that was developed really within mental health services It's a program that supports people with enduring mental health problems to find jobs and to have sustainable jobs. Very good evidence base for this in international high-quality trials. I looked to see whether there were any employment outcomes of services offering IPS to substance users. There were one or two. They were very limited in scale, but encouraging. And so that evidence persuaded us, as we wrote the report, to ask the government to test at a much larger scale that approach for people with substance misuse issues. We recommended a robust randomized control trial of a high fidelity IPS approach. So that is doing it as recommended in the original trials and not trying to take a shortcut approach to it. And we thought that that would help to build the evidence to enable effective commissioning and also enable the employers to feel more secure. So the trial in 7 centres went on from 2018 to 2021. I stayed close to it. I visited the centres, and therefore I retained my interest in addiction, and particularly at that time in returning people to the workplace, giving them something interesting and meaningful to do. In talking to many people who were drug dependent, what they told me is if they were able to stop their particular drug of choice, there was a big black hole. They didn't have things to do every day. They needed something meaningful to do. Otherwise, they were quite likely to return to their addiction. Fast forward to the review that I've done for the government in 2 parts. Part 1 published in 2020, Part 2 in 21. I'm skipping straight to some of the things that troubled me and needed attention. I found that drug addiction was not on an equal footing to other chronic remitting conditions. It is a chronic health condition. Many problems in commissioning and the accountability of commissioning. Mental health and trauma, comorbidities. Young people had suffered very badly in the 10 years before I wrote my review. Recovery really, really in the foothills. Housing not sufficient. And I was very keen to get employment and upskilling into the holistic report that I was trying to write. I wanted a holistic approach to drug addiction. There was much to say about the workforce and a great deal to say about prisons and inadequate aftercare. As you will remember, I hope, from my report, I based it on putting the individual who had the problem, the centre of the problem, saying what you have to put around them to give them a fair chance of entering a positive recovery and coming off their drug of choice, or indeed, if that drug of choice was alcohol, then it wasn't just about drugs such as heroin and cocaine. In the end, what my recommendations do is support the treatment of recovery of people who not only have a drug addiction, but also have an alcohol addiction. And I said all of this could only happen if there was strong government leadership and investment. 6 departments of state need to contribute and need to make a particular, albeit sometimes small contribution, but essential to success. A central unit, which we now have, ministerial leadership, which we have through Chris Philp, and local accountability, which we have through our drug partnership boards and senior responsible officers. What did I say in my review about employment? I said purposeful activity is crucial once remission has been established. Having work or something meaningful to do, as I've said, is essential. And very few people in treatment receive the right employment support or move into employment. And as we know, people in treatment and recovery are stigmatized. And for the reasons I've said, employers were often wary of hiring them. So I made some recommendations that DWP work with OHID to roll out this IPS, which in the trials was showing very favorable results, that DWP recruit peer mentors to encourage drug-dependent people to claim benefits and not be frightened of accessing employment support. And if possible, although I appreciate the Job Centre Plus staff are already pretty overworked, to try and equip the staff in their offices to be able to help drug-dependent people more intensively. Just one slide of progress so far. We have made good progress with DWP, who've been extremely helpful with our IPS program. So in 2021-22, they decided to extend and expand funding to many new areas. And the 2021 UK drug strategy commits an additional 21 million for a 3-year phased rollout of IBS-PS to all English local authorities, taking the programme funding to about 40 million. So far, we're just completing year 1 of the drug strategy, and that's seen funding and support offered to 24 teams serving 26 local authorities. Now that they're becoming operational, these 24 new teams will be able to work with over 2,700 people per year. And you can see there our planned expansion. So this is really the route that I've taken through my review to bring work and meaningful activity into the lives of people who are drug dependent. One other thing that I've been really interested in is how we support people as they leave prison. And I just want to mention a service that I've recently visited because I was very impressed by what they do. That is Tempus Novo. It's a service run by individuals who have been prison officers, so they know these states very well. And of course, the prisons trust them. They have a strong partnership with prisons, and they know what it's like inside a prison and how to work with prisons. So they work with people with criminal records, and they do the risk assessment, the selecting, and they find people who are suitable for their program. And then they ensure that these individuals become work ready, carefully match them to employer vacancies, and provide ongoing support afterwards. This is, of course, the critical issue. They provide a 12-month support program in place for the employer and the employee to ensure an effective relationship. And you can see that over their 8 years of existence, so far 600 people placed, only 30 returned to custody, so 4.4% compared to the national average of 45% in 12 months and 64% in 24 months. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention too. So what have I learned? Employment skills and training are essential components of recovery. Sustainable support by skilled workers is needed. You can't just find the job and leave the person. There are, quite frankly, no quick fixes to this. We have to find employers who are willing to participate and to destigmatize addiction. But I believe very strongly that lives can be turned around. So I salute the work that you are doing. Thank you.